So here we are at Kingsholm, the home of Gloucester Rugby. Exciting. John, we're going to be talking to Willi Heinz today about innovation. It's pretty cold.
Looking forward to it.
It's pretty cold. We have the team have been out doing their captain's run before the Harlequins game tomorrow. We're still on lockdown, so we're kind of trying to do the social distance thing and all that. Here we go. Willi will be with us in a minute now, John. We're obviously covering a lot of topics around innovation. This is our second recording that we're doing. Pretty interesting to go to sport, given our backgrounds and what have you in the world of sort of engineering and technology and software. And people might find that a little bit surprising, but actually, you know, Gloucester Rugby, the whole sort of elite and professional sport, has a whole range of elements that go together to make it that whole ecosystem be successful, and therefore there's plenty of opportunity for innovation that goes on. And I guess probably Formula One and what have you, people maybe see more innovation because they tie it to sort of the technology. For me, what's interesting in this conversation today is we're going to look at some of the more human aspects of innovation and the mindset aspects of innovation, and really looking in at both at an individual level, but within the context of a team and the wider organization, how innovation can come to play. And we'll hear that from Willi in his sort of direct personal experience. What are you looking forward to in terms of this conversation, and how does this sort of work for the sort of thinking that you're having around the topic of innovation and what we're looking to share with people through the work we're doing here with our video casts?
Well, first of all, JP, you mentioned that innovation isn't necessarily just about technology. It can be about all sorts of things, the way you do things, the processes that you use. And I think we should get some really good illustrations of how innovation applies to competitive professional sport, which is not something people would necessarily associate with high technology, as you said. When I'm talking about innovation and when I'm writing about innovation, I always try and look for metaphors and analogies that I can use to illustrate points, because sometimes the points can be a bit dry and not that entertaining to read. And I've got an idea that sport can provide a lot of very good metaphors for the kinds of things that we want to talk about when we talk about innovation. And I'm hoping that we can bring one or two of those out when we talk to Willi later on.
So this is going to be interesting, and with that, let's talk to the man himself. Here he comes. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Willi Heinz, professional rugby player for both Gloucester and England, and we're going to talk a little bit about innovation in sport and innovation in sport as insofar as it's affected Willi throughout his career. Willi, where does your passion for rugby come from?
Yeah, I think growing up in New Zealand, rugby's a massive part of life. You know, rugby in New Zealand is kind of like football in England, and everybody at some stage probably has some sort of involvement with rugby, be it playing or in the background. And I can remember being taken along to rugby for the first time at the age of 5 or 6, and I just loved everything about it. I can still remember that first day down at the Burnside Rugby Club, running around with some mates, frosty grounds, just all those, I guess, the intangible types of things that you get from rugby, the camaraderie with your friends, the actual playing of the game. It's such a dynamic game, challenges you in different ways, and I've just loved it ever since I first started.
Has your passion for the game changed over the course of your career?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it has changed a bit. I think those things that sort of hook you in, they never leave you. That level of passion is still there, but probably what has changed is as I've got into professional rugby, and I guess had the opportunity to really grow as a rugby player. That's where the passion's changed a little bit. I can remember going on a Canterbury under-19 trip to Australia, and it was, it wasn't professional then, but it was as close to professional rugby as I'd come to at that stage. We had a couple of weeks in Australia playing a couple of games. We were coached by a couple of guys who were professional coaches, and it was sort of my first taste into what professional rugby might look like, where you're just living and breathing it every day, training, recovering, preparing for a game as though you're professionals. And I guess I just saw the opportunity to improve and to grow, and as I've sort of taken a step into professional rugby and to this point in my career now, I think that's where the passion's sort of grown and developed. It's a real privilege that we've got to do something that we love doing, and a lot of people love to do, but I guess to see how you can challenge yourself and try and reach the potential that you've got within the game, that's, I think, where the passion's sort of grown for me.
Willi, it's been a big journey to come from Christchurch to Gloucester and to England. That must have been a big upheaval for you. Can you talk a little bit about the motivations behind that and how that's been for you as a family and as a player?
Yeah, it was a big change for us. Playing in the UK was something that I knew early on in my career I was always really keen to do. English grandmother, who I was really close to, she lived out in New Zealand and lived with us in our family home for quite a long time, and I was really close with her, and she spoke so fondly of England, and was really encouraging if I ever got the opportunity to come over here, not just as a rugby player, but just to experience the UK. That was something that she was really, really keen for me to do. And when I met my wife and we started talking about, if the opportunity ever came up, we'd be really keen to do it. And when the opportunity came up at Gloucester, we did a little bit of homework and looked into the area and found out what a great place it is. We've got three young children, and seemed like a really good fit to bring a family over and really settle into the area. And I guess the best piece of advice I got given before we made the move was by my first professional coach, actually, Rob Penny, and we sat down and had a coffee, and he'd spent a bit of time in Munster, and so he had been through that transition of moving a family to the other side of the world, and he just said to me, when you go over there, just absolutely buy into whatever it is Gloucester are doing, both at the rugby club, in the community, and you should have a really good time. But if you go over there and you're always looking over your shoulder at what's happening in New Zealand, or you're always thinking about family and friends, it sounds a little bit cold, you probably will struggle. So it was a great piece of advice. Just get in there, dive in headfirst with whatever Gloucester are doing, and from a rugby perspective, don't go over there and try and make it the Crusaders or Canterbury, or don't try and change anything. Just do what they're doing, dive in headfirst, and you'll probably really enjoy yourself. And that's kind of the approach we've tried to have, both from a rugby point of view, but from a family and life point of view as well. And it seems to have worked for us.
In your personal experience, how do you see the game having innovated over the time that you've been playing, Willi? And by that I mean both at a technical level, but also at a personal level.
Yeah, I think from a rugby specific point of view, there's probably three areas that the game changes and innovates over time. The first one would be physically. I think if you look back to where professional rugby first started, and you look at the type of athletes that were playing the game then to where we're at now, it's constantly getting bigger and faster and stronger, and so that's changed the game in some respects. I think from a technical point of view, we have so much technology and data and information now that drives a lot of the change that we see in the game. So how we play the game, how we approach our skill development is something that coaches and management and players are always looking at to try and improve. From a tactical point of view, I think you probably more than innovations, you see the game go in cycles. I don't know that the game's innovated a huge amount from a tactical point of view. I just think that different things can adjust the game at times, and sometimes the game's very defence orientated, sometimes it's very attack orientated, and that seems to be quite cyclical, I guess.
Okay, that's good insight. From your perspective, where would you like to see innovation take place in the game? Where would you like to see the game go next?
Yeah, I guess from a strategic point of view, an area of the game that is quite topical at the moment is the stop-start nature of the game, and the amount of time spent without the ball in play. So I think an innovation that could be quite pertinent for rugby is finding ways to have the ball in play significantly higher than where it's at. At the moment, rugby league has the ball in play for around 69 to 70 minutes. Rugby union has the ball in play for less than 40 minutes. So, it's a significant amount of time spent with no action on the field, basically, and ways that you can look at doing that are speeding up resets of play, so scrums and lineouts, but at the same time you've got to be careful not to lose the uniqueness within rugby, which is scrums and lineouts and set piece plays. But I think if we can find a way to increase the ball in play, we'll get more tired players, more fatigue in the game, and that will create more space, more opportunities for exciting attacking play, and ultimately that's what everyone wants to see.
100%. How is life balance and overall well-being being innovated from your perspective?
Yeah, look, it's a really important part of what we do. I think rugby as a profession can become quite an all-encompassing thing, and if you don't have some sort of life balance within your approach to your career, it can get away on you quite quickly, and being aware of that and having a plan around it is really important. Something that probably early on in my career I didn't think too much about. Was sort of flying by the seat of my pants a little bit, and everything was pretty easy, and I was just enjoying the ride. And I suppose when you start getting into the second half of your career, you start to become more aware that there's an end point here, and there's at some point you're going to have to make a decision on what and what you're going to do next, and having a plan in place is really important. There's a lot of different avenues you can go down in terms of that professional development away from rugby, and I think what's really important is finding something that's really unique to you and something that you can really connect with. Often there's programs out there that are offered to players that are pretty generic, and that they almost become a bit of a box ticking exercise, where personally I've found what's been really important for me is having a group of people that I really know and trust, and they kind of tick off different areas within my life. So I've got probably 3 or 4 different mentors, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I check in with fairly regularly, and like I say, they tick off different parts of my life and sort of help put my mind at ease a little bit about that transition when it is going to come.
So digging into that a little bit further, in terms of your own personal development, what sort of journey have you been on there? Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, I think to look a little bit deeper into that idea of having a group of people that you sort of touch base with regularly to help with that transition. Probably early on in my career, I was guilty of saying yes to everything, which at some points can be a good thing. It can open up different things. But what I found really beneficial was just having almost like a bit of a laser beam focus in terms of what is it that I'm wanting to achieve? What is it that I'm sort of aiming towards? And what I do at the end of my rugby career, in some respects, is less important than why I end up doing what I do. And what I've found is if I have these 3 or 4 people that are sort of you know, my real trusted advisors, that you know, we speak a lot about purpose and why, and you know, they can really help with guiding me and keeping that, I guess, real clear laser beam focus on you know, how I transition when the time comes.
So, you know, hopefully you've plenty of rugby left in you yet, Willi, but in terms of that preparation for the next stage of your career, what sort of aspects are important to you now, and what sort of aspects are you looking to build upon when you move beyond taking to the pitch for your day job?
Yeah, I think you know, there's lots of different things that you kind of need to prepare for and need to try and have in place, both now while I'm playing, but also when I do transition out of the game. And you know, a couple of those are probably around leadership and resilience. Leadership has been something that I've had a bit of experience in throughout my career. Sometimes I've sort of been thrown in that position and probably haven't felt always ready or prepared for that. And then as I've got a little bit older, it's you know, it's something that I've become more and more interested in, trying to strike the balance as a leader and understand what's really important. And so I guess some of the things that I've learnt from leadership would be around pretty basic things on how you treat people, but you know, within a rugby team, just treating my teammates and you know, the wider group, you know, the leadership and the management, kindness, respect, honesty, but also having a level of challenge within your approach as a leader. You know, I think that's really important. You know, the balance between being a challenging leader but also being a really supportive leader. And I think if you can have high levels of both of those things, then you know, you can hopefully see some results. So you know, it's something that's a real work on for me, and hopefully as I grow my understanding and my experience, then you know, that's something that will potentially help later on when I do transition out of the game. I suppose from a resilience point of view, again, that's something that's going to be really important, because you know, when you're playing the game for a long time, sort of over 10 years, in some respects it becomes all you know a little bit, and the thought of moving on into another career is pretty daunting. But having a level of resilience and also, you know, looking beyond resilient and understanding what that looks like and what that feels like, and I guess trying to take that approach into the next phase of my life.
Yeah, 100%. Your teammates are obviously pleased with that answer as well.
They're into it.
They're out training at the minute.
I really enjoyed watching England in the World Cup last year, and obviously despite the disappointment in the final, I thought it was a really successful campaign, and I think it brought a lot of joy to a lot of rugby fans here. JP and I are talking a lot about innovation in business, and in business I think it's very important to be prepared to fail and to almost embrace failure as a way to learn and to improve. But at the same time, I think it's important that a team believes that it can win and believes that it can succeed, because otherwise you don't generally. Do you see the same sort of thing in sport? Do you think it's important to fail in sport in order to learn, and how do you reconcile that with the need to believe?
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic question, and you know, I think in sport the reality is you're always going to fail. You know, very few teams ever go through unbeaten, and so you know, losing or failing, however you want to look at it, is just a reality of what we do. And certainly when we do lose, you often look at things a little bit deeper and a little bit harder. But I think one of the unique things about professional sport is the level at which we constantly are reviewing our performance. So, you know, to give you an idea of what a week would look like, we would go through, you know, we'd train 2 to 3 times a week out on the pitch, and after every training we review the footage of that training and analyse our performance effectively. So you're doing that a couple of times a week, and then obviously you play the game at the weekend, and then on a Monday morning you go through it with a fine-tooth comb again. So you're constantly looking at your performance, you're you're constantly analysing it, reviewing it, and looking at ways where you can improve and where you can get better. And obviously when you're not doing things well, there's always a reason for it. And so what we try to do is limit the errors, obviously, limit the things that don't go well. But when they don't go well, there's always a reason, and there's always a way that you can improve and get better. So it's a valuable thing, and probably quite unique to sport, that constant review. I suppose in business it probably doesn't happen as regularly.
That's brilliant, and I think you're right, and I think there's a lot that business could learn from there in being prepared to fail a little bit more, and then being prepared to ask the hard questions and to review what happened. And then talking about innovation, can you give me a practical example of innovation that you saw with the England camp?
Yeah, I think one of the areas that we really looked to grow was around our mindset, and so it's I guess a little bit of a different kind of innovation, but coming into the pre-World Cup camps, I was really new to it, but one area that the team and Eddie were really keen to improve on was the team's resilience. They had been put in some pretty difficult positions in games in the probably 12 to 18 months prior to the World Cup, and had gone through a bit of heartache. They'd lost games that they seemed to have won pretty comfortably, and found that there was just something missing there within the top 2 inches, I guess, within their mindset. And so the team sat down with a psychologist and started to explore the concept of resilience. And it's something that a lot of sports teams speak about. Everyone wants to be a resilient team. You want to be able to find a way through those tough moments, hang in there, all those sorts of things. But what she really challenged us on was looking beyond resilience. What does that look like? And what we sort of discovered or came up with as a group was beyond resilience is this idea of bring it on. It's almost like we're not just trying to hang in there. We're not just trying to survive these tough moments. We're actually really welcoming of these tough moments. We invite those moments in, and when we started to prepare like that, started to train like that, when things got really tough, and rest assured, when you're training under Eddie Jones, they get pretty tough in training. That kind of mindset of bring it on. We want this. This is what it's all about. It seemed to serve us pretty well, and right through the World Cup training camps and then into the World Cup, it was something that we spoke about regularly, and was working well for us. Just a shame we couldn't quite finish it off in that last week.
Yeah, so close, but I love that concept, and again, I think there's a lot that businesses could learn from thinking about it that way. So I've got this belief that innovation it's a process. It maybe will start with a good idea, but then it goes into creating some sort of value with that idea and eventually capturing that value. And I know you're working on innovation with the academy here at Gloucester, and just interested in how you see that creating and where the capture of value comes from. Is that in terms of just getting points on the board when you're playing games, or is it in terms of bringing new talent in and helping the club to grow in the future, or is it even in terms of raising new talent that can then go and apply their trade somewhere else in the country or possibly even overseas?
Yeah, I think to give a bit of background, it's still really early stages within the idea, and it's something that myself and one of the other players have sort of been chatting and thinking about for a while. And I guess the concept kind of is born about because it's an area that we feel over the last few years been something missing a little bit, and that's when a young player is sort of graduating through the academy and into the first team, just their readiness at times, and sort of feel like the level of support and I guess guidance and mentorship for those young players when they're taking that step into the professional ranks just hasn't always been there. And like I say, it's still early stages. We're still kind of figuring out what it might look like, but we're pretty keen on the idea that when a young player comes from the academy into the first team, he needs to be ready to perform for the first team, and for him as well. As a young professional, you often only get a few opportunities and a few chances, and when you get that on the big stage, you want to be ready to take it. And so that's kind of the innovation we're looking at. Some clubs around the Premiership are already doing it, and they've put resources and coaches into those positions to guide and develop those players. The club here at Gloucester are currently looking at that space a little bit as well, and it's something that we're keen to grow and develop. And there's a number of reasons why it's important, and why we see value in it. And firstly is for the player to be ready to perform. Obviously that's going to benefit him, it's going to benefit the team, but also from a financial point of view, it's absolutely beneficial for the clubs to be developing homegrown talent. And so there's a number of reasons as to why we feel that this is a really promising innovation.
Great, and that's a win for the player and for the individual and for the team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Professional sport can be pretty ruthless, and if you get thrown in the deep end and you're not ready to swim, unfortunately you can get spat out pretty quickly, and we don't want to see that happening.
Great, thanks.
Cool.
Really great conversation, very enjoyable, and some brilliant insights, Willi. So thank you very much for taking the time to share that with us. It's been very much appreciated, and it's great to get the context that the topic of innovation is significantly wider than a lot of things that people connect with innovation, which is predominantly invention-led. So that's been really good to sort of dig into some of the other aspects which are less obvious, and particularly to get insights within the game. So really want to thank you for your time today. We also really want to thank Gloucester Rugby for hosting us today. Fantastic facilities. They laid on the weather and everything, and the team training in the background. Couldn't have been better. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I really enjoyed it, and got some really good insights, very useful insights. So thanks for that from me, Willi.
Great, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Enjoyed it.
That's what professional rugby looks like, eh? 30 men screaming.